BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for the Farming Today podcast. I'm Kaz Graham, and coming up in this episode, an invasion of octopuses around the southwest coast of England, and fears for the continued supply of veterinary medicine to Northern Ireland, with no agreement on that in this week's UK-EU agri-trade deal. But we start with bovine tuberculosis. We've been discussing it all this week, from current eradication strategies to the latest in finding an effective way to vaccinate cattle. A breakout of bovine TB, or a breakdown as it's called when a farm loses its TB-free status, can be a huge financial blow to a farm business, and the emotional impact on farmers can be devastating. Dairy farmer Roger Lewis has first-hand experience, having dealt with bovine TB on his family-run farm in Pembrokeshire. He's chair of the NFU Cymru TB Focus Group, which has been working with the Welsh Government to improve their policies on dealing with the disease. Mary-Claire Carey-Jones has been to meet him.
I recall the day that 9 calves had to be put down on farm. We had to hold those calves for the slaughterman to shoot them. And I recall my family, my daughters, who would have been sort of 9, 10 at the time, watching from the farm. And my father and I, we just hugged each other after it happened. And this happens on farms up and down the country every day.
The emotional impact of dealing with bovine TB. And it's because of that distress that on-farm slaughter policy was changed in Wales last year. Now the removal of cows can be delayed, for example, if they're close to calving. Since the new rules were introduced, on-farm slaughter has been avoided for around a quarter of cattle culled.
That's been one change, and we welcome that change. We worked with Welsh Government and the technical advisory group that was set up by Welsh Government in relation to that. There's been small changes, like removing the need to test under 42-day animals, but unfortunately none of these changes are going to have an impact into the disease that we're finding. And the numbers that came out recently would suggest we're losing control of this disease as opposed to the opposite. These animals, they're 6 to 7 months old.
And these cows would be subject to TB testing?
Yes, this group would be now.
What would be involved if you had to test them now?
It's just 2 jabs. 3 days later then, the veterinarian will go back and look at the injection site. If there are any sort of reactions, any lumps there, he will then measure those lumps. And basically, it is their interpretation then of those lumps as to whether that animal is a reactor, an inconclusive reactor. So an inconclusive reactor would be a bit of middle ground, unsure, or they're a clear animal.
This autumn, new regulations will come into force in Wales restricting the movement of inconclusive reactors. So I've travelled to the Welsh Government offices in Cardiff Bay to meet Deputy First Minister Hugh Aranka-Davies.
So under the new arrangements, resolved standard IR cattle will be restricted to the herd, with only licensed movements permitted direct to slaughter or into an approved finishing unit, and that policy will come into place in the autumn. But that's a major change, but it builds on, I have to say, the work we previously did with on-farm slaughter, again listening to what farmers were saying and what the veterinary profession was saying.
But are the changes enough?
I think they are, because broadly speaking, over the last few years, the levels of herd incidents have been declining steadily.
But the number of cows culled were at their highest level last year.
You're absolutely right. But what we have got is herd prevalence. Deep within those herds, sometimes where it's not being picked up very easily as well. So in response, we've pioneered now in Wales with gamma interferon tests on top of the other tests we're doing. That has flagged up cattle who we've identified as high probability then of testing subsequently with TB. We're enabling farmers then to make the decision on it, and many are making the decision then to say, let's cull that beast. That's not a signal of failure. That's a signal of getting on top of the stickiness within herds. We're out there testing more sensitively with new testing, but it will mean we have a rise in culling while we do this.
That report came from Marie-Claire Carey-Jones. Well, an outbreak of bovine TB in his herd of Simmental cattle was one of a number of traumatic events that led to Oxfordshire farmer Eddie Rixon experiencing a mental health breakdown. His road to recovery came through reshaping the farm business. Sarah Swadling met him for this week's On Your Farm, and they sat on a special bench built around a tree trunk, which Eddie calls his sit spot.
The sun comes up in front of me in the east, and just to the right of that is Tame Church, where my mum's buried. The sit spot for me really has been quite transformative, allowing me to get better in touch with my emotions and really more importantly my connection to nature. For 2 dark years I was kind of lost at sea.
So how did that experience influence the way that you decided you were going to farm?
One of the things I was really clear on my 30-year strategy was then how can we help the mental crisis that, having gone through that myself in our community, how can we provide an environment here at the farm that creates an opportunity for people to come to the farm, to connect with nature, to help address that mental health crisis.
And to find out how he's achieving that, you can hear more from Eddie On Your Farm this Sunday morning at 6:30. Now, if you like taking a dip in the sea, you may have noticed it's not as cold as normal. In fact, the sea temperature around the entire west coast of the UK is 2.5 Celsius warmer than it normally is at this time of the year. That's according to the National Oceanography Centre and the Met Office. They've called it a marine heat wave, and we're likely to see more of them in the future because of climate change. The warming of our coastal waters means a change in the variety of species that can thrive in them. Fishermen in the southwest of England are reporting an invasion of octopuses turning up in lobster and crab pots. Well, it's good news for some fishermen who are catching and selling the octopuses, but disastrous for others. Janine Jansen reports.
Fishermen here in Brixham are landing around 4 to 6 tonnes of octopuses every day, and they say the last time this happened was back in 1952.
It's thought they're coming here from Morocco, as Moroccans are reporting a shortage of them there. Barry Young is the managing director of Brixham Fish Market.
This is the Mediterranean octopus, and we know it's a Mediterranean octopus. It's got 6 legs and 2 arms. This year there has been an absolute invasion of them. But it's not so good for the inshore fishermen and the crab fishermen, because they are decimating the crab fishery at the minute. The crabs, the lobsters, the scallops, they're just decimating it.
In Plymouth, crab fisherman Brian Tapper is at his wits' end.
The octopus are ruining us. If it continues, we've probably got 5 or 6 weeks left before we close the factory. Then we have probably 2 months left before the boats get tied up, because we can't keep subsidising everything. There's just nothing there.
A local bylaw says in Devon some crab pots must have an escape hatch so that juvenile crabs can escape, but unfortunately so too can the octopuses.
The octopus are coming in the little side hatch in the entrance here, and it's like McDonald's for them. They're just sitting in there. When they're full, they'll go along a whole string of pots. They'll go through 50 pots, and all you'll get in here is empty shells, little small lobsters, little small crabs, nothing, even scallops. Scallops are they take the scallop in there to eat. It's almost like they're using it as a home because it's safe, and then once they've finished, off they go. Because they come out of this easy.
The Devon Fisheries and Conservation Authority has listened to concerns and has now agreed to temporarily allow fishermen to close the escape hatches, as long as they only fish for octopus and release any crabs or lobsters caught. Meanwhile, the effect on the shellfish industry this summer could be huge.
It will long term become a massive problem for restaurateurs to be able to source any shellfish.
That's BBC Spotlight's Janine Jansen reporting from Brixham. Veterinary medicine is not part of the Sanitary and Phytosanitary, or SPS, agreement sketched out between the UK and the EU earlier this week. The Cabinet Office has confirmed that to Farming Today. Vets in Northern Ireland are increasingly concerned that some veterinary medicines won't be available after the end of this year, when a grace period under the Windsor Framework allowing medication from Great Britain to cross the Irish Sea and be sold there runs out. When questioned about it in the House of Commons this week, the Prime Minister said he is aware of those concerns.
On the question of vet meds, I do understand the issue, and we're working to resolve the particular problem that he has set out, and he's right to do so, but we're working to resolve that. I think we're in a better position to resolve it by cooperating and coordinating with the EU, which is what we are doing.
The British Veterinary Association, though, says it's disappointed a deal on veterinary medicine wasn't done alongside the agreement on border checks for agri-foods, and that time is running out. Rob Williams is the BVA's Junior Vice President.
We had hoped that they would try and do it in parallel or at the same time, but maybe it's not unreasonable that they haven't.
I mean, veterinary medicines are available in Northern Ireland at the moment, though, and through until the end of this year. Just explain what the current situation is.
The vast majority of veterinary medications are manufactured in Europe. Medicines will be supplied into GB and then distributed into Northern Ireland. Because of the Windsor Framework and the special status that Northern Ireland has, from the 1st of January 2026, Northern Ireland must comply with EU rules with respect to the supply of veterinary medicines. And so that particular supply route would be untenable.
What kinds of veterinary medicines are we talking about? How many and how serious will it be if no agreement is reached?
That is currently unknown. And so we have some concerns that key products like antibiotics, pain relief medications, maybe some vaccines might be lost. And that would have a negative impact on animal health and welfare in Northern Ireland. It would put veterinary surgeons in a difficult position. It would put farmers and other animal owners in a difficult position, because maybe medications they rely on today to treat their poorly animals, or in some cases to prevent disease, run the risk of being lost to them.
Is the solution perhaps to just send medication straight to Northern Ireland rather than it coming through GB? Just change the supply route.
So certainly one route that is being used by certain of the pharmaceutical companies is to transport medications direct from the factory of manufacture to the island of Ireland and then onward into Northern Ireland. Our problem is we don't fully know what we're dealing with and what we're facing into, and that's where the concern and the worry exists.
OK. Gavin Robinson, the DUP MP for Belfast East, raised this with the Prime Minister in the House of Commons on Tuesday and pointed out the irony that the SPS agreement would allow animals to go unchecked to Northern Ireland, but not the medicines used to treat them. So Keir Starmer says that cooperating and coordinating with the EU is the best way to resolve the problem.
Certainly the sentiment of what you've just said, I agree with. Cooperation and collaboration is the only way that this particular issue will be resolved. Our concern is the lack of open dialogue with us as a profession. If we knew the following 80%, 90% of product that is available to veterinary surgeons in Northern Ireland is going to continue to be available from January 26, and this 10% or 8% or 15% of product, unfortunately, is not going to be available. If we knew that now, then we could work out if there are alternative ways we could manage a disease or an illness, if there are alternative routes of supply that we could explore. It's the fact that we don't know any of that information is what's causing us a problem. And that's where I would encourage the government to be more open with us as a profession.
That's Rob Williams from the British Veterinary Association. And that is all of your farming for today. I'm Kaz Graham. The producer is Heather Simons, and the programme is a BBC Audio Bristol production.